show with two retired detectives that were in the thick of New York crime, fast and hectic. They got some stories and some jokes, even an interview with the most popular folks. Off the cuff, one episode just ain't enough. Get a little laughter and an interview too. It's maybe the best thing you can do.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, Bill Cannon, a 27-year retired veteran of the NYPD. And with me tonight, straight out of Brooklyn, my co-host, retired NYPD Detective Phil Grimaldi. How you doing, Phil?
I'm doing pretty good, Billy, and I'm just glad to have a wonderful guest on tonight, my paisan from Brooklyn. So this is going to be a good one, Bill.
You know something? When I go to Brooklyn, it's impossible not to have at least 50% to 100% Italians on my show. But it's all right. I get along with you guys, you know? Yeah, so folks, if you don't know, Michael Vecchione is retired, legendary Brooklyn DA, 30-year veteran. He ran the homicide squad. He ran the whole homicide bureau, was senior trial counsel. He's worn many hats. He worked for the NYPD. He's done everything. So talk about a guy who knows the in and outer workings of government. Michael Vecchione is one of those guys. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, guys, for having me back. I really enjoyed the last time, and I'm sure we'll enjoy tonight as well.
Tonight, you're going to have even more fun, you know, because we're going to talk about the Cuomo brothers, you know. It sounds like the Rosado brothers from The Godfather, you know, exactly. but it's the Cuomo brothers. You know, this whole story, it's like you can't help but look at not only like corruption in politics, but corruption in media. The media is so complicit in these cases. And the media, when they have the balls to say, our job is to shine a light on things. Oh, yeah. When it suits your political background, when it fits your political ideology, then you'll shine a light on it. Other than that, you'll turn a blind eye for that. And during the tenure of Andrew Cuomo's 10 years as governor, he was known to everyone inside and outside of government as a bully, a big-time bully. And he got away with things, including major corruption, the Buffalo Billions, the Moreland Commission that was appointed to weed out corruption in New York State, got too close to him. What did he do? He got rid of it. I mean, come on, are you kidding me? It's like, and how about we didn't even touch upon the nursing home scandal? And we'll get into that a little further, but the nursing home scandal where 15,000 senior citizens could have been saved if they were put on a hospital ship delivered to the east side of Manhattan by President Donald Trump. But he didn't want to make Trump look good, so he put them in a nursing home and 15,000 people died. And then he tried to cover it up. How about writing a book on the state's dime, getting paid $5 million and then acting like that's okay, using state employees? No one lays a glove on him. Now, supposedly, the FBI is looking into this. Yeah, the weaponized FBI is looking into this. So let's see how he comes out of all this stuff, including all these sexual harassment. There's bound to be lawsuits about this stuff. And as I said, the press, the media is supposed to shine a light on corruption. Not only did they not shine a light, but they ignored it for 10 years. Mike Vecchione, thoughts?
Well, let's start with the book for a second, because that one kind of hits home for me. I got to tell you a little story. When my boss, Joe Hines, was running for re-election, his last election, during the course of his campaigning, one late afternoon, early evening, he called me at the office, and he called me on my I guess he called me at the office. So I picked up the phone and he asked me a question. He wanted my opinion. Should I say this about this topic, or should I say that about this topic? So I gave him my opinion, hung up. Now the phone call, guys, had to last maybe 5 or 6 minutes. He loses the election. I retire. He's out. About a year later, I get notice that the Conflict of Interest Board is investigating me because they say that I violated the ethics rules of the city because I used a quote unquote government apparatus to have this conversation with Hines. Now, I had to pay a $1,000 fine. Plus, I had to pay a lawyer who handled the case for me. So when all is said and done, it cost me about $2,500 for this 6 or 7 minute phone call. Cuomo used his entire staff for the most part. And you can't tell me that they didn't use government equipment, copy machines, computers, and telephones to write this book. That if anybody says that they didn't, they're a liar. I'm telling you. And what happens? Nothing. So far, nothing. He doesn't get the J. Cope, which is another one of these phony ethics groups, doesn't do anything to take his money away from him because they should forfeit that $5 million that he got for the book. And I haven't heard any talk about some government agency fining him for using all of that equipment and using those people on state time to do a personal, essentially a personal favor for this guy. So, and you're correct, Bill. It's the media. The media just will not go after him, and it's very simple why. During the pandemic, he was supposed to be this hero, the anti-Trump, because he would have these daily briefings, and everybody started to love him. Most of the time, what he was saying was basically he was full of shit.
You know, so, Mike, they had him this hero. Meanwhile, he was just reading a PowerPoint that other people did for him.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. And as you said, he let the hospital boat go unused. He let the Javits Center, which was converted into a hospital by the Army Corps of Engineers, and then refitted to make sure that the ventilation system could handle the COVID. Right. That was done as well. How many beds did they use? I think it was like 14 beds were used the entire time. And meanwhile, hospitals were backed up. Nursing homes people were dying in nursing homes. And unfortunately, between 6,000 and 10,000 people were killed because of Cuomo, the quote unquote hero, who was building phony mountains about how, they took care of things and we beat the curve. And he had this stupid poster that he had printed up to show what a great guy he was. And I'm sure that was done on state with state.
Mike, there was nothing more sickening than his appearances on CNN with his brother and goes, Mom likes you best. No, she likes you best. Oh, I wanted to vomit. I couldn't even watch it.
Exactly. I happened to, unfortunately, see the one where the brother had that big, huge Q-tip because it was supposed to fit. And I was so disgusted by it that I just turned it off. It was a joke. And now,
how could you make a joke about such a thing? That was so disgusting. Every one of us knew someone that died from COVID, and even in the early stages of it. Never mind, it's a year and a half, almost 2 years later. And to joke about something like that, that just shows you what narcissistic tendencies they both had. And it was really, you're right. It was stomach turning.
The brother faked this return to his family from the basement. Meanwhile, he had some people talking about how he was out and about out in East Hampton. So, it's a joke, but nobody in the mainstream press would call them on it. No one, because the anti-Trump was the brother, Andrew. And I'm sorry, the anti-Trump was Andrew. They hated Trump so much that they needed someone they could hold up as the anti-Trump. And Andrew was doing it. It was the one. And
with an assist by his brother, Chris, who worked for CNN.
Without a doubt.
It was the old 1-2 punch. Billy, I just want to give the viewers that might not know the history, people that aren't from New York, a little bit of background on Andrew Cuomo. By the way, today's his 64th birthday. He was the 56th governor of New York, born in Queens, went to Fordham University, graduated Albany Law School. He was an assistant district attorney in New York County. He became the HUD secretary under Bill Clinton. He was the New York State Attorney General in 2006, and then he was elected governor in 2010, reelected 2014 and 2018. Obviously, he had a very good career before the whole thing with COVID and the allegations of at least a dozen women of sexual harassment, sexual abuse, etc. So that basically is his career. I think he made all his political connections along the way that shielded him from a lot of the controversies. But once it got to the Me Too movement with the sexual harassment, and it wasn't one accuser and two accusers and three, when it got to be 10, 11, and even I think as many as 12 or more accusers, that was the beginning of the downfall. And then Letitia James, the Attorney General, started an investigation, which was the New York Attorney General. And in August 10th of 2021, he said he was going to step down within 2 weeks, which I thought was absolutely horrendous. How does he get to pick when he was going to step down? And in that 2 weeks, he commuted sentences. He gave himself a golden parachute, obviously. We all know how politics work. He didn't give away those commuted sentences and pardons for not some type of
And Philly, you know who he pardoned? He pardoned Baldwin,
yes,
the father of the San Francisco DA who murdered 2 people during the Brinks robbery in Nyack, Rockland County. And that's why people in Rockland County want the damn bridge named back to the Tappan Zee as fast as possible.
Exactly.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely,
and
absolutely.
his cohort, Bill Clinton, pardoned the mother of that.
Yes, that's
mother.
right.
So
That's right,
he
Mike.
got out.
And she's a Columbia University professor now.
Yes,
Exactly.
So we're connecting the dots on all the lines of corruption and all of the pay for play schemes that went on over the last many number of years. But now you guys talked about the COVID deaths on March 25th of 20. That was right at the height of the pandemic. He issued an order along with the Department of Health saying that COVID positive senior citizens that were in nursing homes and were taken to hospitals, COVID positive, had to be returned back to the hospitals, to the nursing homes. They couldn't stay in the hospital. They couldn't go to the ship you were talking about, Mike, and they couldn't go to the Javits Center. What was the outcome of that? As many as 15,000 deaths. And
Correct.
he actually, one of his aides actually admitted under oath during the Attorney General's investigation that they fudged the numbers by saying people who were sent out of the nursing home critically ill, very close to death, they were sent back to a hospital. If they died in the hospital, they didn't count that as a COVID death. Meanwhile, they contracted it in the nursing home. So it was about 15,000 people. And now listen, I don't want to downplay any of the sexual allegations that went on with Andrew Cuomo. They're all horrendous. It's terrible. It's unacceptable behavior. However, 15,000 people were killed because of the policy, which he rescinded on May the 10th. So for those about 2 months or so, March, April, May, so about 2 months or so, he kept the policy. Why would he revoke it if it was so good of a policy? So he revoked it and would never apologize to it. And all he had to do, but his narcissistic thinking, was say, listen, we thought we were doing the right thing. We thought by sending him back, it wouldn't spread as much or whatever, some kind of a reason. Instead, he denied it. He blamed the Trump administration. He tried to blame everyone except himself. And a typical arrogant bully narcissist. He refused to take any responsibility for it. And now it came back to bite him. Unfortunately, I think the sexual allegations part of it is what really took him down. But there are 15,000 people that lost, 15,000 families that lost loved ones. And that to me strikes really harder at what this guy did and the ridiculous and horrific policies that he instituted during that COVID. And he got a $5 million book deal out of it.
Philly, I want to play a little bit of his deposition just so you folks from out of town can see how charming this guy is. And
charming. Yeah,
we're gonna play a little bit of it right now.
I don't remember when they would normally alert me to things I needed to know about in the press office. I don't know when they first said to me, Lindsay is taking this attack.
And by them, you mean the press operations, and who was that in end of 2020?
That would be whoever was in the press office. They would brief me when I was going to do a press event on things that might come up. So whenever they thought this might have come up, is when they would brief me on it.
But you're not on Twitter, so the only way you would know is if someone told you.
Yes.
Okay. And so you don't have a specific recollection of toxic team environment.
No.
Okay. And then if you look at the next tab, tab 30, it's more tweets from Lindsey Boylan. Now it's a week and a half later, December 13. And she's now tweeting more about sexual harassment.
Right.
And she originally says at the top, my first experience of workplace sexual harassment was when my mom got her first real office job. And then going down, she says, yes, at New York Club, Cuomo sexually harassed me for years. Many saw it and watched. I could never anticipate what to expect. Would I be grilled on my work, which was very good, or harassed about my looks? Or would it be both in the same conversation? This was the way for years, et cetera, et cetera. She has a couple of others. Do you remember learning about this tweet or this substance of this allegation that now she was saying?
They must have told me about it at the time. I don't remember it, but I'm sure they told me about it at the time.
You remember being told in substance she's now saying this?
Yes.
And like, you don't have a specific recollection, but likely the press.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, and just to be clear on this point, Governor, in terms of what Mr. Kim just showed you at tab 29, which were a series of tweets on December 5th, and then tab 30, which are tweets on December 13th, do you remember having separate conversations about it between the 5th or the 13th, or do you remember this together?
I don't remember any of it.
Okay.
I'm just sure that at one point it reached the level where they said, he's going out there, we have to talk to him about it.
You don't have, even looking at this, you don't have a specific recollection.
No.
They came in and told me about toxic. You just have a general recollection. At some point, they said something to the effect of, you should be aware.
Yes.
She's saying
yes.
This stuff. And then, was there any discussion that you were involved in about how to respond to this?
Yes. Well, then it became a question. What do I say when I go out there? Which was more after she wrote her magazine article.
Okay. So putting aside, and we'll get what you should say if you're asked at an event, press event or something, about what you and the executive chamber should do to respond. Or
it was about what I should say. I am the responder, right? So it was about when they ask me, what do we say, right?
So putting that to the side, how about, should we do anything?
Well, that's all part of the same thing.
Okay. Were there any discussions that you were part of where people said, you or others discussed releasing documents relating to her issues?
I do not remember having any conversations about releasing the items about the complaints against her. I don't believe I was involved in that. There was a protracted group discussion about what is the best way to handle this and what to say.
And who was part of these protracted group discussions?
Everybody and their mother.
Okay.
Everybody had an opinion.
And who, like Melissa DeRosa?
Melissa had an opinion. Steve Cohen had an opinion. The press office had an opinion. They then would ask outside advisors, what's their opinion? They then talk to lawyers, what's your opinion? Then they talk to advocacy groups, what's your opinion? Because you need to say something. There's not an option, go say nothing. But obviously a high level of sensitivity has to be taken in what you say.
It's amazing. It's almost like what a lawyer who is representing a rapist, how he has to approach the jury so as not to prejudice the jury by being too hard on like cross-examining a witness.
Exactly.
And
I was thinking exactly the same thing. The questioner was very deferential almost to him as opposed to pressing him. And believe me, as a cross-examiner, who I've done it a lot of times, he could have really pressed him in many. For instance, he asked him who was part of the discussions, and his answer was everybody and their mother. Well, that's not an answer.
Right.
Right. Exactly.
The reason he asked that question is because they now want to call in all of those people to see.
Well, Mike, a smart Brooklyn DA would say, "Could you name some of those mothers?"
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, Bill. Exactly.
I just want to bring a sentence in from the New York Times that's from this deposition. He stated, "In my mind, I have never crossed the line with anyone, but I didn't realize the extent to which the line has been redrawn." That could be Bill Clinton.
Absolutely.
He must have went to the Bill Clinton school of bullshit.
Well, listen, guys, he was there when Clinton and Lewinsky, when Clinton was having all of his Lewinsky problems. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, I read that he's the guy that gave Clinton that cigar, the infamous cigar that, that he used. Yeah, he says he got it from Cuba, and he told Clinton, "Don't say anything where I got it from. Don't ask, don't tell." And that's what, if I remember correctly. But he knew exactly how to handle this, or the way he handled it was the exact same way that Clinton handled all of this stuff back with Lewinsky. So yeah, he had training, let's say, as to how to handle it. In fact, when there was one question somewhere along the line, I remember exactly what the point was, but he said, "Well, it depends on what the definition of the word." And I forgot what the word
was. It was girlfriend.
Okay, girlfriend. Well,
I guess it depends on your definition of what a girlfriend is.
Right, and that's a Clinton line. Clinton used that same thing when he said.
But Mike, you know something? I blame the questioner not to double down and say, I want to know the answer, and he didn't double down on him. Like Cuomo started asking him questions. And we all know from being interviewers, that's a no-no. I'll ask the questions. Right. You give me the answers.
Exactly. You know what the issue is? The issue is, as you put it, Bill, intimidation somewhat. I'm going to give you just one other example. I had a case involving a corrupt politician. And one of our witnesses was Shelley
Silver.
Shelley Silver, excuse me. Yes. I had to call him to the stand to ask him a very simple question about procedure in Albany. The judge, who was an appointed judge, and not an elected judge, appointed, he put me through the friggin' ringer that day about how long you're going to keep him in the room before you call him. How long is he going to be on the stand? How long, what kind of questions are you going to ask him? Make sure that you're polite with him. It was unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Well, he also got convicted. He got convicted. He really belongs in prison, but they let him stay out while he's appealing, right?
I was just going to say he has a long reach with a lot of friends because he was convicted and yet he's still not in jail. He might have been in for a short time, but he's out. Listen, he's got friends in high places.
Exactly. And I asked him a question that he would absolutely know because it was something that they did in Albany as a matter of course, filling out expense forms to get reimbursement. And he said to me, I've never heard about that, the procedure to, I don't really know what it is. Now, come on. And I'm sure that the jury didn't buy a single word that he said, but that's the way they are. They believe that they are indestructible, that they're the shield, first of all, was the Cuomo name. And the second part of the shield was that he had, the power of the governor's office behind him. And, that was it. That's why he felt he could do the things that he did.
Don't forget, too, where he came from, Mike. He was in the federal government under Clinton. He had, made a lot of relationships, obviously,
without a doubt,
the Secretary of HUD. So he must have thought, even with all of this negative publicity, he was the guy that kind of, not made Trump get so much, positive feedback on how he was handling the pandemic, because every time Trump would come out and say, we're doing this, and, he asked for 10,000 ventilators. Trump got him as many as he needed, got him the hospital ship, got him the Javits Center. There was a Christian group that set up a temporary hospital in Central Park. So the assets were there that they needed, whatever they needed. And he just figured a way around it to bash him every day. And that's why he was doing those daily press conferences. That wasn't about giving people the update. It was about bashing Trump, you know?
Precisely. And Bill,
You know-
you talked about the press. The press did exactly the same thing as Phil just outlined and just talked about. They protected these guys. Anybody who was anti-Trump got protected with the press, and they're still getting protected. It's, you know,
you saw in the beginning of when Trump was going to get him the ventilators and everything, he actually came out one day and said, listen, everything I've asked for, the president has given me. Boom, there was like a barrage against him within the days following with the media. And then he went negative every day since and never looked back.
Guys, I want to play a little bit of Chris Cuomo since he's the other
I got a lot
part.
to talk about with him.
He's the other part of this, and let me.
Cuomo on Tuesday after a state investigation showed in greater detail how he helped his brother, former Governor Andrew Cuomo, defend himself against sexual misconduct allegations. Cuomo addressed the suspension on Tuesday on his Sirius XM radio show.
It's embarrassing, but I understand it. And I understand why some people feel the way they do about what I did. It's the last thing I ever wanted to do was compromise any of my colleagues and do anything but help.
That was Wednesday on the Sirius XM radio show. As for Cuomo's future, CNN says it is up in the air pending further evaluation.
Well, we obviously now know that he was fired, and they didn't fire him because CNN has a conscience, so CNN has some kind of integrity. They fired him because they had to. When they saw what he was doing, he was also intimidating witnesses, reaching out to other journalists to get the information on witnesses against his brother.
Precisely.
For what reason? So he could intimidate them,
Right.
you know? And all of a sudden, like, CNN now has a conscience that they're going to do something about it. It's really scary because it's like when you talk about weaponizing power, that's weaponizing power. You know, and being in this position where you have the ability not only to find out this information, but use it and destroy someone. That's really scary.
Exactly. And I'd love to find out if the allegations of sexual harassment by him, Chris, with these people at ABC, which is now years and years ago, never been talked about before. Did CNN do any kind of investigation before they hired him? The answer is probably no. But so far, you know, that's the excuse that CNN is now using why they fired him, because, this is just even more than what he did with his brother. So I don't know. I'm pretty certain that he probably did do it, but who knows? You know, I mean, it may be just simply the excuse because nobody has talked about it before this. No one. And that raises a red flag for me.
A little background on Chris Cuomo. I did a little research on him. He's 51 years old, also a graduate of Yale, Fordham Law. But here's the thing. Now, his brother's the governor. Now, I'm going to fast forward a little bit into his career, but think about this. Now, the brother's the governor. Chris worked for CNBC, MSNBC, CNN, and Fox News. He was actually the morning anchor for Good Morning America from 2006 to 2009. And he also worked on the show 2020, which is an ABC show. In 2013, he was doing CNN mornings. And in 2018, they named him into a primetime spot. So the point I'm trying to make is he had a grasp on a vast array of people in the media business, journalism. So when he was, this came out in the Attorney General's report, Letitia James's report, that he was having discussions and participating in legal strategies with a top aide to the governor regarding the sexual harassment allegations and inquiries about the victims and how to do deep dives into their backgrounds so that they could use that as a positive way to help the governor, basically, sandbagging the victims. They were going after the victims. So that's why I think CNN had to fire him. Listen, I get it's your brother and you want to help your brother. When the allegations broke, he could have went on the air and said, listen, I am going to take a leave of absence because I would like to support my brother. Anything he did from that point, I don't think would have been looked upon as negatively it is right now. He may have even retained his job. But once he started, he was conducting an investigation basically with the top aide from Cuomo, the governor's office, I won't say Cuomo, they're both Cuomo, but Andrew Cuomo, the governor's office, and she admitted under oath that she had daily conversations with him regarding these victims. They were calling them accusers, but they were victims. And they were actually talking about how they were going to strategize and what press releases they were going to make and what statements they were going to make. So he was very, very much on the defense of the governor. And that was actually something that a journalist shouldn't have been doing. He crossed journalistic lines. It was a conflict of interest. And I guess that's why he's no longer working for CNN.
Mike, I just want to, Joe Murray, who's a defense attorney, he's given me money again, so I got to read his comments. He says, "Hi, Mike. Why hasn't anyone offered Joe Percoco a cooperation deal for information about Cuomo's illegal dealings? The SOL is extended 5 years for public offenders who commit crimes in office."
Well, let's just say that never say never, and it's not over yet. So, the investigation, if it's legitimate, and I really say that, knowing about some of these investigations that take place, then they may very well get around to Percoco and giving him a deal.
You mean line up the usual suspects? Is that what you mean by those investigations?
Boy, I wish Mike would have had this investigation, because I know it might be turning out a lot different.
Guys, I want to play a little, just because it's so apropos to what we're talking about, the dishonesty of the media. And I want to play a little bit of our friend Alec Baldwin's interview, because it just reminds me of exactly what we're talking about here.
Marker, good.
Great.
More fun.
Alec, thank you for doing this.
Man,
you haven't said much in public since that tragic accident. Why speak out now?
Well, I think that there's a criminal investigation. That could be a while. There's all kinds of civil litigation. And I felt there were a number of misconceptions, most of it from sources I really wouldn't concern myself about. But a couple that I did concern myself about, where there were these authoritative statements about this is what happened. The sheriff's department hasn't even released a report to the DA yet. The reason I wanted to sit down with you is because I really feel like I can't wait for that process to end in February, March. I mean, I'm not asking them to speed it up for my benefit. That's ridiculous. But I am saying that they're going to do what they need to do. And I wanted to come to talk to you to say that I would go to any lengths to undo what happened. I would go to any lengths to undo what happened.
I think the big question, and the one you must have asked yourself 1,000 times, how could this have happened?
Well, there's two things I want to say about that. One is that when I talk about this, my concern is that I don't sound like I'm the victim. Because there is a victim. There's a woman who died, and my friend got shot. He's my friend. And she was a new friend. I met her and we worked together on some of the mapping out of what we're going to do on the film, which, in the movie terms, if you go make a movie with Scorsese, you and the DP don't sit down and they solicit your ideas of how to make the film. You know what I mean? In the case of Helena, we sat down collaboratively and talked a lot about what we wanted to do in that a precious amount of time we had. But I want to make sure that I don't come across like I'm the victim, because we have two victims here. And the second thing is that all of what happened on that day leading up to this event was precipitated on one idea, and that is that Helena and I had something profound in common. And that is we both assumed the gun was empty, other than those, dummy rounds.
I want to get into more detail on the day in a minute, but let's take a step back. What was it that drew you to this project in the first place, to Rust?
I'd worked on a project with Joel before.
Joel Souza, the director.
Right. He did this movie, Crown Vic, that I produced. And Joel and I stayed in touch. We're friends, and I loved Rust. He said, I want to send you this. And I read it, and I said, I love it. I love it.
Rust, a low-budget Western, tells the story of an aging outlaw on the run with his young grandson. Baldwin, the film's star, is also one of the producers.
Very excited. So excited that we finally got this made, because every independent film has many false starts, and when it finally goes, you feel like a plane. When you finally get some lift under your wings, it's very, very gratifying. I am a purely creative producer. My authorities as a producer are casting and script, which are actually married to the.
Do you see how he's trying to remove himself from any responsibility regarding safety or anything else? My whole job was just taking care of the towels. I wash the towels every day. You know, like, are you kidding me?
Yep.
Role of being a lead actor in a film.
So you're not the kind of producer who's looking at the line item of each budget.
No. There are basically two types of producers who are really in charge of production. People that raise the money and the people who spend the money. My consultations or approvals were completely about casting and about the script. I don't hire anybody in the crew. I don't
Not even the cinematographer, no one.
No, but he will apprise me of what he's doing.
I have absolutely nothing to do with safety. Let's make that clear.
And they'll say to me, I got Helena Hutchins to be the DP. I said, how do you feel about that? Are you excited? I'm very excited. She's wonderful.
What did you know about Helena Hutchins before she started working on this?
I knew nothing about her until Joel said to me, I got her. She was fantastic.
Helena Hutchins, the talented cinematographer praised by many in the industry, was a trailblazer in the field historically dominated by men.
Make sure we don't see people walking around like walking there.
Ready? Action.
The Ukrainian-born cinematographer quickly gelled with Baldwin.
The people who watched
everybody. Let me move a little further on.
Who worked with her?
Rust's 21-day production began filming on October 6th at the Bonanza Creek Ranch, just outside Santa Fe, New Mexico. The ranch has long been a favorite location for filming Westerns.
Did raise any red flags with you?
No.
Okay. This training course you do, what did she tell you?
She said things like, remember, this is a blank round, so you have to create the discharge yourself because there's no projectile. So if you shot the gun, you go bang. When we roll the camera, you got to go bang and have the gun snap back. You have to create that. She would give you little tips about firing, and she'd say to you, when we're done, point the gun down. When we're done, you give the gun to me or to Halls, only those two people.
Dave Halls was Rust's assistant director, also known as the first AD. Seen here in this IMDb photo, he was responsible for keeping the production on schedule.
Sometimes we would be on a set that was a very, very cramped set, and they wanted people in that room on an as-needed basis. If I'm holding the gun and they say cut, I then hand the gun to Halls if she's not there.
Yeah, why Hall's not Hannah? Some people have said that only the armorer should be handling
No.
it.
That's inaccurate. Meaning in the protocols of the business, meaning Hannah would to hand me the gun 99% of the time, whatever, the preponderance of the time. But when we would say cut, if Hannah was away from the set, I would hand Halls the gun.
Hannah Gutierrez-Reed had a dual role on set, armorer, and she was also the assistant prop master for the film.
One of the things her attorney has said is that she was hired for 2 positions on the film and therefore was stretched in an inappropriate way. Did she raise any of those concerns with you?
No, I assume that everyone who's shooting a lower budget film is stretched, myself included.
Well, I just wanted to, comment on some of the things there. We went over this case in much more depth when we had John Paolucci on, who's the ballistics expert. And Alec claimed that he never pulled the trigger, which we proved in our last show that we did on Alec Baldwin was an absolute lie. And this journalist, George Snuffleupagus from Sesame Street, never asked him follow-up questions, was throwing him gigantic beach balls to catch. And I'm sure that if he didn't like Alec Baldwin, he would have been going after him. And he would have had a ballistics expert to refer to after he asked him that question to refute the answer he gave. None of that was present during this interview. And I saw George Stephanopoulos the next day on Good Morning in America, and he was like, it was one of the most intense interviews. Are you kidding me? That was one of the most softball interviews I've ever witnessed in my life. Phil Grimaldi, I could see you chomping at the bit. Go get him.
Well, basically, he used words like preponderance, which is a legal term. So he obviously went over things with an attorney, which I guess that's almost like standard in a situation like this. Why he did it was really trying to get out in front of everything. He knew that, the investigation, it was far out enough from the actual incident that he can now talk about it, but it wasn't to the point where they were going to make decisions on whether there's going to be criminal charges or if there would have been any civil cases going on. So he was trying to get out in front of it. And listen, it's all choreographed, like you said. The thing that got me with that whole interview, and I went over it the last time, when he said Stephanopoulos asked him if he was guilt, if he felt the emotion guilt, if he felt guilty, and in a quarter of a second he said, no, absolutely not. Now I use the scenario: if somebody cut the brake lines on my car and I pull out of my driveway and I, God forbid, ran over a kid on a bicycle, I'm feeling guilt, even though it's not my fault. He should have never said that. I think the torrent of negativity that came his way afterwards, he had to pull down his Twitter accounts. He did himself no good. Mike, I don't know. What's your opinion? You think he did himself any good with that interview?
No, I don't. I think he was horrible because basically what he did is deny. That's essentially what he did. Yeah. And if he went on that show without being prepared by his attorney, then his attorney has to get locked up for malpractice, because who would send someone who is in the middle of this firestorm, criminal investigation, civil cases, many civil cases? How do you put someone on in that hot seat and have them answer questions if you don't know what the questions are going to be? Now, you can't tell me that ABC didn't go over those questions with his attorney, because who would let someone go on there in that situation without getting a sense as to what the questions were going to be? And Bill, you hit it right on the head. Softball doesn't even go; it's wiffle ball, basically.
Mike, it was a total love fest.
Oh,
it was
my
like,
God.
Alec, we love you. We're going to ask you the easiest questions. Don't worry, you know.
And he cried at the right spot, you know. And you know, I got to tell you something. I at one point in my defense attorney career, I represented an actor, and he testified on his own behalf at the trial. And you know what the prosecutor did? And he did this. I would have done it if I was the prosecutor. He said to the jury, I want you, ladies and gentlemen, to remember that this is a trained actor. And what he told you was a story that he is trying to sell to you as if he was in a movie or a TV show, and have you believe what he said. And that's what happened here. He's an actor, and he knows when to cry, when to put his hands through his face, and he looked awful. And I believe that he looked awful on purpose.
Yeah.
Because he needed to show the public that he's so distraught over this. Come on. I mean, he could have combed his hair. He could have had some makeup, and he could have fixed those bags under his eyes.
Oh my God, those bags under his eyes.
That all was done intentionally. That was all
absolutely
done. He wouldn't look like that if he was going on Jimmy Kimmel's show or doing a Saturday Night Live segment.
Precisely.
Philly, he probably said like Jake LaMotta, hit me. You know, he came there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Listen, he was trying to, and he said, I haven't been getting much sleep and that whole thing. But
right.
Look, I think that one of the things that they probably discussed beforehand, because it did not come up, was this is going to be off limits. There were indications and stories. There was possibly target practice with that same gun in the days before the horrible incident that took place. It didn't come up. He was never. That would have been one of the first couple of questions I would have asked. Of course, they keep going, oh, well, how did the bullets get on the set? How did the bullet? They weren't supposed to be live rounds. There were. Yeah, well, there was obviously, and there were other live rounds recovered. We know that already from the police department. The prosecutor admitted that the police department recovered other live rounds. So there was a mixture of rounds, whether it be dummy blanks and these other rounds and the live rounds. So why didn't George Stephanopoulos ask that? I mean, that didn't even, how do you
because he didn't want to ask any question that was tough.
What Mike said, it was choreographed ahead of time that these are the things we'll talk about, and we're going to stay away from this or that.
He never asked also about the budget for the movie. They scrimped on hiring an armorer who really wasn't very experienced. They scrimped on other parts of the cast. I'm sorry, the crew. And that was not talked about very well either, if at all. I didn't see the entire interview, because I got to tell you, halfway through it or 3/4 of the way through it, I said, I can't listen.
Well, he touched base on one of the points. Now, what you're talking about, there were people that were quitting because the hotel room they had to stay in was like an hour's drive away, because it was cheaper and stuff like that. And he said, oh, well, when they came to me with this problem, like a day before the incident happened, I said, oh, I'm going to give some of my salary back to get you guys better accommodations.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And then the guy quit the next day. So it was all self-serving, Mike.
Philly, let's take take a quick commercial break, and we'll come right back.
Joe Murray, attorney at law. Have you found yourself in a jam? Are you in need of legal counsel in the New York area? Do you need a victim's advocate? Well, Joe Murray is your man. He's not only an experienced trial attorney, he's also a retired 15-year member of the NYPD. He literally knows both sides of defense. His website is jmurray-law.com, and his telephone number is 646-838-1702, or you could reach Joe on email at joe@jmurray-law.com.
Folks, if you want to watch things from a police perspective, watch a show where we're trying to get the most eclectic guests you can have in real crime stories. Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories is your show. If you can assist us on Patreon, become a member of our Patreon. We give some extra videos. We talk to our customers on Patreon, our subscribers, our fans. We also have a YouTube channel where you guys can, there's like 5 or 6 levels. For the bucket, $2.99 a month, $6.99 a month. Beverages, backyard beverages with Cannon, coffee with Cannon, whatever you want to call it. $9.99 a month. Polish my rack. $24.99 a month. Dipped in butter. And for the premiere, $49.99 a month. Heated dipped in butter. There's only one guy at that. I want someone else to get some heated dipped in butter. Join our YouTube, please. Feel what that heated dipped in butter feels like. All right.
Who doesn't like warm
heated
butter?
That's right, raw butter,
over a piece of steak or lobster. Come on.
That's right. So folks, it's like, we're trying to, besides covering these stories, there's got to be humor to this, and there always is humor on this show. And comparing some of these characters that we have in the media, and what is their motivation? And it's clearly biased. And I'm not going to say that Fox News isn't also biased. They are biased, but
of course they are.
When they do things like this, there's a certain agenda. And when they use the word journalism, I don't know if journalism exists anymore.
Bill, there's something though, like you brought up Fox News. They have journalists and they have commentators, and they put it out there like this show is a commentary by this commentator, and then during the day when they have their news shows, those are supposed to be journalists. Listen, they might be a little swayed one way or the other. They have their own opinions about things, obviously, and they're not afraid to put that out there. That's why I give them credit. Whereas, these other CNN and CNBC, they seem to be very, very slanted in the left direction, and they absolutely tell outright lies. I just want to stop one real quick second about Chris Cuomo. I left this out. When the whole thing broke about whether or not his brother was involved in these sexual allegations. In March 2021, he came on the air and said, listen, I'm not going to comment on any stories related to my brother. So he took himself out of the mix for that. And then he went on to get involved in these conversations with the top aides. So he really, he put himself in a trick bag, as they say, to be thrown off the show and to be fired. And I just thought that was worth mentioning about him.
Well, Phil, there was one other thing he mentioned. He said also, he promised his viewers that he did not go out and try to solicit information from his sources to help his brother. And that turned out to be a complete lie, because under oath to the investigators, he admitted that he did do that, as we now know he did do.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Here we go.
It's to you who watch my show. And thank you for that. You're straight with me. I'll be straight with you. Obviously, I'm aware of what's going on with my brother. And obviously, I cannot cover it because he is my brother. Now, of course, CNN has to cover it. They have covered it extensively, and they will continue to do so. I have always cared very deeply about these issues, and profoundly so. I just wanted to tell you that. There's a lot of news going on that matters also, so let's get after that.
He's so concerned with the news, right. He's so concerned.
So, that hits right what Phil was talking about before. He is supposed to be a newsman and giving news. But what he is what happens on Fox from 8, 9, and 10. They're opinion people, and they don't they don't hide that. They're opinion commentators. He claims to be a newsman, but the guy after him and the people before him are all opinion people. They don't read straight news. Sometimes they don't even cover things, that happen if they're not
Mike, you know something? You hit it on the head. The biggest disservice the media does is reporting through omission.
Exactly.
It doesn't agree with their narrative, so they just don't report on it at all.
Hunter Biden laptop, anyone?
Yeah. And that's exactly right. And now when they've done polls of people who voted for the president, learning for the first time that there was this whole laptop situation, they said 10% of the people who voted for him said they would not have voted for him had they known about the laptop situation. That if that was the case, that means Trump is the president today, not Biden. So it's that's what the media does, and they do it on purpose. And guys, they're still doing it. They still hide certain stories. They still don't report the whole tragedy in Wisconsin.
Yes,
they haven't reported on that in detail like they did with the Chauvin, Chauvin homicide. That is
it caught a quick media cycle, and then now it's out of the news. And yet, with the kid that killed all the kids in the high school last week, I mean, granted, that's a horrible thing, and they should cover it. But they put the other thing that guy was actually a terrorist. He was legitimately a Black Lives Matter terrorist, and they dropped it. And it's disgusting how we're supposed to have. Listen, in what we do on podcast and in television. Media, there's a certain part of it that is like a little bit of show business. Now that's what they were doing at CNN. They weren't reporting the news. They were conducting show business. They were only showing one side of it, not reporting other things. Then you can't call yourself a journalist, because a journalist, you're supposed to report.
Phil, I think what you're talking about is when it suited them to be entertainment. For example, when he was the star, when he was the star of the United States during the COVID thing, when he was doing all these presentations, and I was reading in the chats, these people were just gushing over this guy.
I loved him.
Oh my God, what a leader! What a leader! And I would go into the chat and go, "He's a disgrace," and people would be like, "Yeah," But it was like they were gushing over this guy, and all he was doing was reading a PowerPoint that someone else produced for him.
Yeah, they loved him.
And they loved it. And now it's like CNN would bring him on, and him and his brother would do the Cuomo brother act. And people were like, "Oh my God, they're so great. I love them. I'll marry you." I was just like, this is disgusting. That's journalism.
His demeanor, Andrew Cuomo's demeanor, when he gave those presses every day, he had a just certain way about him. He was a bit of a commanding, and he just was very slow and methodical about it. And even though you could tell he was full of shit, what he was saying, it sounded believable. It sounded like the right thing. I mean, how could you make a claim that putting people who were infected with COVID back into a nursing home, which that's the highest risk category, is elderly, and you're going to put them back there? That makes sense, but he sold it to the American people. And when people were dying, they didn't want to believe. They were like, no, it was Trump's fault. They just wanted to point it at Trump. It was really sickening and disgusting. And he just had a way of he put on a good act. That's what it was. It was an act.
After he rescinded that order in May of 2020, why didn't the press ask him or ask him about all of the people who died in the nursing homes as a result of that order being in place? No one asked him that. No one asked him, well, why didn't you send them to the Javits Center? Why didn't you send them to the hospital ship? No one asked that, because the press was looking to do what they were told to do, which is don't make him look bad. He's our anti-Trump hero, and we can't have you making him look bad. That's what that was all about.
Mike, let me ask you something.
Sure.
Does Andrew Cuomo recover from this, and does he run for office in a year, 2 years, 3 years? Does he recover from this?
You want my gut reaction? Yes.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you.
Yes, he does. He does, because look at how horrible a career the guy who's in the White House has had over the course of the last 50 years. He has done nothing. He never passed a piece of legislation. He's been caught lying about his career, about his background. He just is horrendous.
Also,
yet,
allegations of sexual harassment on the
all,
president
yes,
as well.
absolutely.
Ignored, completely ignored in the media.
All of that sniffing of the hair of these little girls, and that woman who made the allegation during the and look where he is now. He's in the White House. After all of that, the guy is the typical perfect swamp politician who, you know, has gotten along because he gets along. That's the bottom line, you know. And so yes, I believe that there is the possibility that Andrew Cuomo will run for office again. Hey, and he believes it too, guys. He has already started to talk about running for attorney general.
Yes,
So,
I agree with you, Mike, because he's just an arrogant bully narcissist.
Yes,
and
he is.
What is a narcissist? If you look it up in the dictionary, it's I didn't do anything wrong. I'm going to be able to run again. You know, he's going to take that stand. It's all about him, not about the victims, and not about the 15,000 people he killed. It's about him.
Now, there's one caveat to that. If he is convicted of a crime, and if it's a felony crime, then he will, of course, be barred from holding office. Right. If it's a misdemeanor, he still can hold office, but it's very, very doubtful that he would. The one of the things that we haven't talked about, but I feel that it's one of the most insidious things that has happened during this investigation is, and I'm sure she didn't do it on her own, Melissa DeRusso called a woman who used to work for, who was working for the MTA, to ask her to call a former staffer of Cuomo's out in California to test the waters to see if she was going to jump on board with these other women, and if she had heard anything and was going to testify and going to come on board. And the conversation that they had, these two women, was the recording of it was of in California, you need to have a two-party approval, consent to record someone. And that may very well be a problem for everybody. And if it turns out that DeRusso, and I'm sure she's going to say this if she gets put in handcuffs, hey, listen, guys, he told me to do this.
Right.
He told me to do it. Well, now that question about Percoco, that's when it comes up, because maybe Percoco has information that can back up the way that Cuomo runs his office and the way that he intimidated people. So that could very well stop him if he gets convicted of a crime.
Lover of the Law, new YouTube member of Police Off the Cuff. Thank you so much for joining the Police Off the Cuff family. We appreciate all you guys who are channel members, all our Patreon members, and just all you folks that are subscribed that listen to us. And, we call this Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories. And in the daytime, I have Coffee with Cannon, but sometimes I call it Bitchin' with Bill. Sometimes I think this show becomes Bitchin' with Bill, Phil, and Mike, because that's what, former cops, that's what we love to do. We love to complain, and I'm sure DAs are no different, right, Mike?
I was going to say, a former prosecutor is in the same boat as you guys. So, he likes to complain as well.
Yeah, we love to complain. So why not? This is our venue. This is how we complain.
I don't call it complaining. I call it giving my professional opinion on things. And some things are just so obvious, like with Chris Cuomo faking his quarantine. He came out of the basement, and then the day before he got into an argument with somebody while he was out riding his bike. The guy saw him and said, "Aren't you supposed to be quarantining?" He's riding a bike without a mask. So listen, I'm not saying that, you can't go on CNN and say, "Oh, quarantine and you should be wearing a mask and you have to stay away," and then you're out not doing it. It's so hypocritical. It's ridiculous. And I really think that karma got both of these guys. I believe in karma, and it came back to bite both of them on the ass, and no love lost with either one of them. Hopefully, let's hope that doesn't happen, Mike, that Andrew winds up running again for office. I think Chris will find his spot in media somewhere along the way.
There we go. Put it up.
Cleared by CDC. A little sweat. Yeah. Workout happens. This is what I've been dreaming of, literally for weeks. My wife,
what a liar.
She's cleared by the CDC. She doesn't have fever. She doesn't have the symptoms anymore. I'm more than 7 days from quarantine. We're still a little scared, so I'll just give you one of these. 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 Bella has, of course, taken the video. This is the dream, just to be back up here doing normal things. Thank you for being so nice to me. Thank you for taking care of everything you had to. Thank you for taking care of me. And Bella, thank you for stepping up and now adding family videographer to your resume. She's rolling her eyes. Wow. It's not for me. Thank you. This is for when we go outside. That's what we have to do now, all of us in New York. So anyway, I'm back. Let's get after it.
Unbelievable. You know, guys, you know how much of a hypocrite he is. It turns out that there were reports that his wife was bathing during this time in some kind of bleach and some kind of other kind of stuff that, to fight all of this stuff. Meanwhile, I would bet you dollars to donuts that when Trump made that stupid statement about drinking the bleach, and it was a joke, and clearly everybody should have taken it as a joke because it was. I mean, no one could take that seriously. I'm sure that this guy was criticizing him, and yet now we find out that his wife was doing something similar to what Trump was saying you should do. Can we use it? Can we use that stuff to help us? But
yeah, he made like a facetious statement, and they took it as like, oh, he said you should inject bleach into your body.
Exactly.
That's not what he was saying. Now, one thing about Trump is this: when you look at the President Biden that's been in president for about a year now, he doesn't take questions. He does a press conference. He makes a zillion mistakes. He obviously can't find his way. Trump would get up there and ask questions until there were no more questions.
Right.
He was the president. Every day you heard from him. Now, and even going back in history, you didn't hear that many statements or press conferences from the president. Like
guys, I have to show this video, and then we're going to make comments after this, because this is the famous Fredo video.
Which one this is?
Anchorman Chris Cuomo lashing out at a Trump supporter who insulted him.
I'll throw you down these stairs like a punk.
What was the big insult? The guy called him Fredo.
I didn't insult you. You called me Fredo. You know my name's not Fredo.
He's referring, of course, to Fredo Corleone, the loser brother from The Godfather.
I can handle things. I'm smart. I'm smart. Everybody says like dumb. It's smart, and I want respect.
For Cuomo, whose big brother Andrew, governor of New York State, it's a big-time slur.
Fredo is from The Godfather. He was that weak brother.
Isn't that your
And
brother?
they use it as an Italian aspersion. Any of you Italian? Are you Italian? It's an insult to your people. It's an insult to your people. It's like the
No, you're an insult to the Italian people.
Exactly. To the delight of the president, who is no fan of Cuomo's.
What Chris Cuomo did was horrible. His language was horrible. He looked like a total out of control animal. He lost it.
CNN says Cuomo's rant was justified. Chris Cuomo defended himself when he was verbally attacked with the use of an ethnic slur in an orchestrated setup, the network said in a statement. We completely support him. He's also getting support from an unexpected source, his TV rival, Sean Hannity from Fox News. I say good for Chris Cuomo, Hannity tweeted. He's out with his 9-year-old daughter and his wife, and this guy is being a jackass.
Go take a swing. You want to call me Fredo? Take a swing.
Also on Team Cuomo, Anthony Scaramucci, the former White House communications.
Oh, I don't like him.
Co-host the podcast Mooch and the Misses.
My heart was for him because he got ambushed. There was obviously a camera on him.
What happened to this guy's neck?
Trigger him.
Yeah, really.
Young children, and he got defensive.
Cuomo is now speaking out, saying he regrets losing his cool. I should be better than the guys baiting me, he tweeted. No need to add to the ugliness.
I'll throw you down these stairs like a punk.
That's not really an ethnic slur. That's a nice.
Something. Yeah, Phil.
Exactly. It's not an ethnic slur at all because
he invented that. He invented
it's a
that
slur
on the
to the
spot.
person. He's an idiot. That's why I called
I
him.
can't tell you how many times when I talk to my brother and my cousin Joe about Cuomo before the Fredo thing, I swear to you, and I can't begin to tell you how many times I said, I'm so embarrassed that this guy is Italian. I mean it. I said it because he was doing thing after thing after thing.
Exactly.
Even before the pandemic stuff. He was an embarrassment to himself, to his ethnicity, to the Italian people. And they both proved that they're both shadrols. That's the only way to put it. They're both shadrols.
But there's all of a sudden he turned into like a wise guy.
Exactly. He was the ethnic slur. Believe me, he was the ethnic slur.
Yeah, exactly.
God.
Oh, the reason for showing that, my second part of that question, will Chris Cuomo ever work in broadcasting again?
Oh yeah,
Without a doubt. Without a
When the
doubt.
smoke clears, somebody will say, "Oh, name recognition. All these women like him, or whatever." Blah, 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 blah. He's got a big fan base. Boom, he'll find a spot and event. Listen, it happened to the guy from Channel 4. Oh God, I can't think of his name. He did the evening news. He's got light hair. I can't think of his name.
Oh, not Brian Williams.
Brian Williams.
Yeah.
He's back on. The other guy from CNN was
But Brian Williams was just a liar. They like liars. Dan Rather was a liar too.
Yeah.
He's working again. Now he's doing rock and roll. He's interviewing rock and roll stars now.
Wow. Listen, bottom line is he'll find a spot. I'm sure of it.
No doubt. No doubt. Hey, listen, look at the cast of characters on MSNBC. That's even worse than CNN.
Oh my God.
And so, I wouldn't be surprised if in a month or two he gets hired over there. Or I would say by the summer he'll be working again. That's what I think.
I could not believe that he was making $6 million a year. I could not believe that. I didn't think CNN made $6 million a year as a network.
They probably don't. And the other thing that's going to happen with CNN is apparently they were sold to another company. And I read somewhere that the guy who bought them, his idea is to transform the network back into a hard news network and not keep it the way it is right now, because it morphed into this, this political opinion all day, every day,
Right.
So
it was owned by Ted Turner years ago.
Yes.
Exactly.
And he
Back
started
in the 90s.
Hey, Phil, some people in the chat want to know, how do you spell Shadrul?
I spell it Chadrule. Shadrul.
Exactly.
But listen, I did an interview. There was an interview with CNN back in the 90s. I think it was around 94, 95, about Russian organized crime. We worked with a guy, a producer by the name of Jim Polk. They were excellent. And it was a show called CNN Presents. It was a Sunday night show. It was an hour-long show. And at that time, they were journalistically okay. They reported facts and we had a great time with them. But now they went into this, it's all about opinion, and it's all about, they're almost like a third arm of the Democratic Party now.
No doubt about it.
Yeah. And I don't want to get into politics so much, but it's almost like you have to, you have to address it. I meat it's obvious what they do, as far as him getting work by the summer, I would agree with you, Mike. I really believe that could be, but there are at least two sexual harassment allegations. One was from a boss from 20 years ago. She came out and said
that's a problem.
So he might have a little trip up there, but I am sure one day soon in the future he'll be back on either radio, cable, or something like that. He'll be back. He's not going away.
Hey, Phil, he already made me an offer, police off the cuff, real crime stories. He wants to buy us out. You don't buy me out, I buy you out.
Yeah, right. That's what he was told. No, you're a Shadrul. You don't buy us out. We buy you out.
You don't buy me out, I buy you out. I've been making bones in Vegas while you were banging cheerleaders.
Yeah. Since we're going to talk about The Godfather and Fredo, bring that up.
Well, you better start calling him Mo from now on. So that
Mo Green. Let me tell you a little story. There was this guy they called Mr. Las Vegas. His name was Mo Green. Someone put a bullet in his eye.
That's classic. And
that was, that actor was right. I accepted it because it was strictly business, right? That was Lee Strasberg.
Exactly. Lee. I have to tell you that when I heard that guy call Chris Cuomo Fredo, I laughed my ass off.
Oh my God.
It was so funny.
It fits so well to what he is and how he is. It's unbelievable. So it was very.
But it's funny how he morphed into and said, "That's a racial slur." How did Fredo morph into a racial slur? Because it's the useless brother. How is that a racial slur?
What he did? He did exactly what the guy was trying to do. He insulted him, and he showed how much it bothered him.
Exactly.
So the guy must have been like, "Oh my God!" The guy had to be getting off on it. It was. He threw an insult at him. It was obviously an insult, and he was successful in getting to him. He got to him.
He did what you're not supposed to do. You're not supposed.
Well, something. He'd be the first guy to criticize cops for getting their child hooked by a protester, you know? Like he was the guy that said, "Oh, since when does it say that protesters have to be peaceful?"
Yeah,
it says it in the first few paragraphs of the Constitution.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm sure he laughed his ass off when about the time that those cops got doused by the water on the street. I would bet dollars to dollars they had a big laugh over that. You know?
Let them put a uniform on, go stand on the front line of the protest, be cursed at, spit at, bottles thrown at you, and then assaulted with fire extinguishers and God knows what else. Then say to me, "Oh, what does it say in the Constitution that it has to be a peaceful protest?" Bullshit.
Hey, at the Michael Brown shooting, he was out on the street jacking up the crowd, like going to the gangbangers and actually encouraging them. I was like, this guy's a reporter? You know, are you kidding me?
Yeah, he wanted to have a good shot for, you know, for CNN.
It's really demoralizing when you think about how the press is in this country today. It's just unbelievable, you know, and I have to tell you that, guys, I have stopped for the most part watching. I don't watch network news at all. And I get most of my, you know, news from reading and I always, no matter what publication I read, I always read it or take it with a grain of salt because I know that the story is not entirely true, no matter where it stands, no matter what paper it's in or in magazine. And that's not the way that that life should be. We shouldn't have to live that way, you know, but we do.
You know, Phil, someone in the chat spelled Shadrul, Cidrule, snow lion, Southern Italian dialect, cucumber or stupid. Austrians also call stupid people a cucumber.
Okay, see, now, I'm glad that she put that because that CIDR, we say it maybe with a little bit of a heart of an accent. I was putting the CH in there, Shadrul, you know, but that makes sense. That's probably the actual spelling in Italian.
Exactly.
See, guys, see, you learn something here. You learn something watching police. You learn all kinds of different words. And
I didn't know it was a cucumber till just now.
I didn't either.
Yeah, it is. It is a cucumber.
I like cucumber or stupid because we know what it means for these guys.
I thought the definition was just stupid person.
Yeah, that's basically what it was. But the old Italians, like my grandfather, my father, and you have to also add this in with it. Jadrul. You got to add.
How about another one was Shemanud?
Oh, Shemanud.
When you're a Shemanud, it's like, what is it? Like, you know, you're walking around and you're going to walk into traffic. Like you're a real moron. Yeah. What are you doing, you know?
Exactly.
You can't cross the street without getting hit by a car. You're a Shadrul.
Hey, how did this morph into Italian 101?
Well, you know what?
No idea.
You know, guys, I'm going to tell you.
Italian from Brooklyn. What do you expect?
Exactly. And we speak the Brooklyn Italian because if you go to Italy and you say those words, they look at you like you're a Jadrul, you know?
Yeah, right. But that's not the same. This is Brooklynese Italian. But the best part is Billy loves it. He's always he calls you up. He goes, "Oh, it's doing Shadrul."
It's great when an Irish guy uses Italian words because it doesn't have the same seriousness of it, you know?
I got a feeling you got a little Italian blood. And we got to do a DNA
I don't know.
check.
Yeah, that's right. You know, guys, we're at an hour and 12 minutes. So usually around this time, I like to give last words. And Phil, I'm going to go to you first. You can give your last words.
Last words. Mike, first of all, thank you very much. We called you last minute. This all came together like last night. Billy said, maybe we'll do a show on the Cuomos. And he actually told me to reach out to you last night. It got past me. And then I called you earlier today. Thank you for coming on. We appreciate your expertise. Obviously, your resume speaks for itself as a tremendous prosecutor for all those years in the Brooklyn DA's office and a criminal defense attorney. So thank you for coming on. One last word about the two Cuomo brothers. When I was in Catholic school, 5th grade, Sister Thomas Bridget used to say, and it fit,
Thomas Bridget,
don't get too big for your britches. That's what these guys did. They got too big for their britches. They thought who the heck they were. And now look where they are. Sister Thomas Bridget, I hope you're still alive. Thank you very much for that quote. I always remember that.
There we go.
Mike, last words. Also, Mike, if you got anything to plug, feel free to plug it right now.
Well, I want to, first of all, thank you again for having me back. And I love with you guys, being on with you guys. It's always a kick. And Phil, it was not a problem that you sent me that text that late. I was happy to do it. I was told you I was in the middle of preparing some things for my new book, which is coming out in the spring, called Homicide is My Business. And that's the plug that I'm going to give. I'm not going to bore people with all of my plugs. go on Amazon. You can put my name in, and you'll see my books and my short stories come up. But the last word I have to say is that all of this, we've been laughing and we've been talking about this, but I believe it's sad. The whole situation is sad. And we have the chief executive officer of this state had to step aside because he killed old people, and B, because he couldn't keep his hands off women's behinds and their breasts. And who ever thought, if you ever talk to your parents about this back then when they were alive, they would say, you're crazy. Nothing like that would happen because they grew up at a time when that stuff didn't happen. And one last thing is, I truly believe that if Mario was alive, that he would be more mortified than anyone at the conduct of his two sons. And again, it's just sadness. But once again, thank you guys for having me, and I'm looking forward to the next time. Hopefully, you'll call me again.
Absolutely, Mike.
100%.
I just wanted to sort of reiterate what Phil said, and I was watching Michael Franchese, who's a retired wise guy that you used to never be able to say that, but he's actually a very articulate and smart guy. And he did a show on the Cuomo brothers, and he said, in my whole life in the mafia, he goes, the only people that met a violent end were guys who were bullies. He's not the only people, but people that were bullies always met a violent end. And when they did meet that end, and I'm not saying the Cuomo brothers are going to meet that, I don't wish that on anyone, but he was just reiterating about the life of being a bully, that no one will ever come to your defense, because once you lose your power, everyone's going to jump on the bandwagon of, yeah, he was always a piece of shit, you know?
Yeah, he was referring to like the downfall, Billy. I watched it too. You're right, 100%. It was like, now this is your downfall, because when things started to get bad, they had no friends. Nobody would help them because they were really bullies. Exactly, arrogant bullies.
Because people were just waiting for their opportunity to jump on that bandwagon and say, no, they always were like this, you know, and now they have no friends, you know. But
well, this was
the way of the world.
This was the punch in the face that they should have gotten a long time ago, the proverbial punch in the face. When a bully does that to you, the first thing that my dad told me was, you can't stand there and just take it. You gotta
Right.
And that's
you
it.
punch him right in the nose.
And that's what this was. This was finally the punch in the face that they deserved a long time.
And it was
ago.
a 1-2 punch. Both of them got it.
Exactly.
Those two shadruls.
Yeah.
So, folks, thank you so much for watching Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories. We really appreciate all our subscribers, all our fans, and we got some big things coming up. My God, 2021 is almost over. We got to think about 2022 and all the great things we're going to do in 2022. Anyway, folks, have a great night. Guys, gentlemen, good night. Thank you for being on the show.
Stay
Good night,
safe,
guys.
everyone.
Thanks for having me.
You'll be back, Mike.
Thank you.
One episode just ain't enough.